Humans. Humans are very small, tiny, not insignificant. Their size, while puny, is backed by a power many races of the galaxy envy: courage, tenacity, and surprisingly enough, scale. First contact with humans wasn't a grand event. We met them at the edge of our space. The ship they met us in? It seemed insignificant, puny, small, weak. When they responded to our hails, we had expected a lost explorer, or perhaps an automated drone, a glitch sending it careening towards the relatively nearby black hole. Instead, we got one voice, 2 voices, 10 voices, several dozen voices all spoke through the comm system. Was this some kind of joke? Did they have dozens of pre-recorded messages ready in an attempt to confuse us? No, they did not. We offered to let them land their ship in our open hangar bay, their ship comparable in size to one of our transport shuttles. Several enforcers approached the ship, expecting an inebriated pilot to emerge from it. Positioned around the small craft, they watched as a small hatch opened in the top, the minuscule section of metal barely warranting a second glance. That was before we saw them, the humans. Standing barely high enough to be measured in our measuring system, we watched as 7 of them spread out around the hatch. That was first contact, an unceremonious reveal. At first, we were amazed that they even existed, much less were sentient as such a small size. Several months after the galaxy at large stopped reeling from the metaphorical blow of their discovery, I, Captain Keiju of the warship Ansendrios, will be the first of my kind to step foot on one of their outer colonies. As I stepped out of my personal shuttle, I marveled at the architecture of their buildings, the colossal structures standing defiant against the high gravity of the planet beneath my boots. My own joints protesting the high gravity, I craned my head back at the nearest building in a vain attempt to see the peaks I could not. Even though I was far outside the metropolis, I felt tiny, insignificant compared to the giant buildings. Bringing my compad to my mouth, I asked the human crew assigned to monitor me, how. The slightly out-of-date compad crackled to life as the sound echoed towards the city. 3 weeks after my visit to the human colony, I finally stand at the helm of Ansendrios, and I once again marvel at the humans. Several decisions and debates held by the various council members concluding in the site before me. 3 rocky planets, a gas giant, and a resource-rich asteroid field making up the small solar system. This relatively small solar system was gifted to the humans by a collection of council members pooling their resources. This solar system would have been a veritable gold mine had it been closer to Council Center. It wasn't, and as such, was chosen for the humans. They had shown gratitude at the council members' kindness when they were gifted the proverbial keys to the kingdom. After several more hours, the human ships, their small warp core emissions easily recognized, arrived in near blinding flashes of blue light. Watching as the human ships continued to stream in from the established warp route, I decided to move Ansendrios closer, under the guise of focused protection. Nearly 300 ships gathered in the orbit of the gas giant, I watched as several groups split off towards different locations. A group of 20 streaked towards the outer rings of the asteroid belt, with another 20 following close behind. Expecting the humans to set up a base of operations, I was surprised as ever when the ships divided into even smaller groups of 2 and 3 before corralling a large asteroid between them. Were the humans this eager to gain the resources to be had from this system that they didn't even set up a refinery first? Watching as the burdened group of ships hauled their quarry back towards the gas giant, I turned my eyes away from the strange sight of the asteroid back towards the remaining human ships. They were gone. In their place was a gigantic black cube, devoid of any features beyond the light, catching the occasional irregularity in its hull. Watching the human ships draw ever closer to the black cube, I realized what it was. The humans hadn't began construction of a refinery yet, because they brought it with them. Seeing a seam appear along the sides of the cube, I watched as it split down the middle before hinging to eclipse the massive rock. Eyes catching the glint of drills and saws in the maw of the beast, I felt a familiar sense of dread fill me as I watched the maw clamp down on the captive rock, shards of rock several times the size of the human ships cracking off, only to be pushed into the waiting mouth by the smaller ships. Eyes fixed on my screen, I heard the comms crackle to life as the human captains conversed with each other. "Ore than we can chew. It'd take a small moon to so much a slow down autophagia. It seems that you put too much faith in her. 40 years at her control, she lets me know what she can chew. How long do you—" Silencing the comlink, I watched in awe as the massive asteroid was shredded by the autophagia. The amount of damage and material removed by the giant drills and saws outpaced what our own mining techniques could remove in a month by tenfold. Several notifications flicked onto my control panel. Gazing down at the panel, I was surprised to see that several hundred more ships had arrived, and then another several hundred, then even more. Staring in mute disbelief at the 1,000-strong mining force gracing the staging ground of the gas giant, I returned my gaze to the autophagia. Watching as the last of the stripped asteroid was ejected from the autophagia, I simply sat beside my command console and watched the maw prepare itself for its next meal. I stand at the bridge of my ship, the Ancendrios, and I do something I haven't done in many years. I command her to fire. Upon my order, the main gun swiveled towards the attack force drawing near our flank. 3 orange globes of plasma burst from the barrel and splattered against a Ken assault ship. Ordering the gunnery officers to redirect fire towards their engines, my eyes swept across the projected battlefield. Dozens, if not hundreds, of human ships were gone. While some had managed to escape the system before the attack, most didn't. Those that didn't were reduced to molten slag by the Ken-heavy plasma beams. The Ken, self-righteous and extremely xenophobic, it was a wonder they hadn't attacked sooner. Not that I was complaining. With their quick destruction of the outer sensor arrays, half of the small guard force under my command were reduced to glowing slag. My ship, the Ancendrios, was only functional thanks to the 2 derelict cargo haulers flanking her side. Seeing a massive burst of hellish red light, I turned my head towards the source and watched as one of the human refineries detonated. Despite the untimely death of the ship, I believe her human crew would watch on from the afterlife and laugh at the devastation the core caused. An expanding cloud of shrapnel shredding her agri-source. Seeing another hellish light flower out of the corner of my eyes, I turned and saw a human refinery surrounded by Ken ships, but I saw not her demise. What I had saw was the detonation of the assault ship she had pulled into her crooked maw. Turning towards my control station, I began plotting a route through the massive debris field, my few remaining ships weaving their own way through the debris. Seeing the maw clamp down on another ship, I redirected our fire into the tightly clumped ships. My own forces dwindled down to the Ancendrios and 4 other frigates. I was glad for the large human ships that weathered the Ken weapons admirably. The humans lost many more than me. I lost 20 ships to the initial attack and 15 more to enemy fire. They lost several thousand ships, and the only ships left functional were their giant refineries. Squinting as massive thrusters flared to life along one of the refineries, I watched a large ship move far too fast for its size. Its maw clamping down on a cluster of smaller Ken ships, I focused the Ancendrios' fire towards the heavy craft drawn alongside the refinery. I watched in dismay as the refinery blinked off the map. I watched as the group of Ken ships also blinked off the map. I ordered the remaining human ships to draw closer to our firing line. We could not lose them. Seeing one of the lined-up refineries break rank and turn towards the Ancendrios, I didn't have the chance to speak before the ship slagged under the intense heat of a plasma weapon. I stared in horror at the Ken ship before me. Several times larger than even the human refineries, the capital ship's main gun was glowing red as it fired once more into the slagged corpse of the refinery before aiming towards another. Watching as the human ships turned towards the capital ship, I heard their comms flicker to life. "Out time we got something good to eat." "Damn right, boys. Howsa, 'bout we have ourselves a last supper." A chorus of whooping laughs and half-baked jests answered the captain of the HFY as they accelerated towards the capital ships. A suicide charge. The humans would rather charge into a capital ship than lose. Seeing the refineries burn towards the capital ship, I ordered my ships to provide covering fire. Bracing myself against my control panel, I watched as a volley of plasma shots flew past the human ships, decimating the smaller assault ships in front of the humans. Watching as the capital weapon prepared to fire, I knew there was nothing I could do as it cut down 2 charging human ships. 3 human ships. A small squadron of assault craft emerged from behind a derelict ship. A burst of plasma beams. 2 human ships. As the 2 ships neared, one being the HFY, the other being Dionysus. The capital ship fired its weapon one more time. The beam of plasma began to melt the outer casing of the Dionysus just before the 3 ships impacted, rewarded with the eye-burning detonation of the human reactor cores detonating, followed by the capital ship's cores exploding. Rubbing the afterimage of the explosion from my eyes, I stare at the capital ship, or at least where it was. Nothing remained of the refineries. Nothing remained of the capital ship. Returning my attention back towards my console, I watched in jubilation as the Ken assault ships retreated to the edge of the system. Humans, despite their size, they have scale. Despite their shortcomings, they have courage, they have tenacity, and most of all, they go down fighting.